Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And with me here, the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Esther McVey, the Shadow Business Secretary under Ed Miliband, who resigned from the Shadow Cabinet when Jeremy Corbyn was elected leader, Chuka Umunna, the boss of Formula E, the electric car championships, and a former MEP for the Spanish Conservative Party, Alejandro Agag, the head of social media for Vote Leave in the referendum, now the campaign manager for the Taxpayers Alliance, Chloe Westley, and the award-winning rapper, poet, founder of the hip-hop Shakespeare Company, Akala. And just a reminder, if you want to get into it, hashtag BBCQT on social media is our hashtag. Let's take our first question tonight from Claire White, please. Claire White.
Would £10,000 for 25-year-olds effectively redress wealth inequality between the generations?
This was a suggestion that came from an organisation called the Resolution Foundation, that every 25-year-old should get £10,000 on their birthday, paid for by various means. Would it redress wealth inequality? Akala, what do you think?
I would frame a policy like this slightly differently. It's about what is the British taxpayer willing to subsidise and what are they not willing to subsidise. For example, in the last 30 years, so across this generation, the British prison population has grown by 82%. It's nothing to do with inequality, it's just because poor people have got innately more criminal. So we're already subsidising a massive underclass. Would a policy like this be effective? Perhaps not, but would a policy that said to people when you get to 18 years of age, there would be, say, interest-free loan available to start up a small business, would a policy like that perhaps be effective in reducing wealth inequality? Perhaps. Are we willing to subsidise people's failure, or are we willing to subsidise their potential success? That is the question we have to ask, because we're already subsidising people to a massive extent. We have the biggest prison population in the whole of Western Europe by quite some distance. So it's about what we are willing to pay for and what we're not willing to pay for.
But a handout of 10 grand... But when you're 25?
I've just said to you, I don't necessarily think the handout of 10 grand will work, because, of course, people on the right will say, poor people getting nothing for no reason, and God forbid poor people get anything for no reason. So, how about we say money available at no interest to start a small business? This is mainstream liberal capitalism. It stimulates entrepreneurship in the age of the internet. Why wouldn't people on the right go for such a policy?
Chloe Westley.
Disclaimer, I'm 23 years old, and when I do turn 25, boy, I'd love £10,000, but I'd like to earn that myself. And I think this policy is a really bad idea for several reasons, but I want to talk about this idea of intergenerational inequality and how to help young people. And I think that if the government wants to help young people like me, it should stop taking so much money away from us. You know, the first time you get your first job, the government takes a chunk of that paycheck. You want to heat your home, you know, green taxes make it more expensive for you to heat your home. You want to fill up your car, 70% of that is tax. You go to buy your food, 20% of the cost of that is gone up by EU tariffs. Thanks to you.
When you're
I
young,
want taxes
no
lower
taxes.
So I can keep more money and save it up for myself.
But when you're
that would be more fair.
So you're not going to pay any tax at all until when? When you're going to choose?
I'm not saying that young people shouldn't pay
tax. Well, you've just described every single tax.
I'm explaining why the cost of living for young people is made more expensive by government intervention, and that by taking less away from young people through the tax system, then you would help them save for things like a house. And what
about giving them £10,000, the suggestion that was in the question and proposed by the Resolution Foundation?
Well, it's really unfair. I mean, there are some 25-year-olds that are really wealthy and some that are not, and this is just a silly policy based on an arbitrary age. I don't think it would be a good idea.
Conditions on the £10,000?
No, I think you just have to be a British.
We have to ask Esther McVey. It was one of her colleagues, Two Brains, David Willits, who proposed it, wasn't it?
Well, it's not a government policy.
No, but it's a clever Tory policy, because Two Brains, David Willits, was thought to be very clever.
He is very clever, but this is something that I wouldn't agree with, because I don't believe there's a quick fix that you can just give somebody at a certain age, £10,000, and that will solve all the woes. So if we're 50, do we get £20,000 for twice the age? Do we get twice the amount of money? No, you cannot do that. But what we do need to do is investment in our young people. It is support, whether that's through education, whether that's through getting people into work. And one of the biggest things that we have done is in a government is support young people into work. So youth unemployment has come down by over 40%. These are the things that we've got to do. It's the building blocks to support people. It is a tough time. It has been a tough time, but if we can support people by giving them the building blocks for life, that is how we're truly going to support people.
Okay. You, sir, at the back there.
I agree with you, Esther, we should build on this and build people, but the Tories have not been doing that. They've been cutting mental health services, they've been cutting education budgets. We need to look at the source of the problem.
Okay, and the woman there in pink. Yes.
I'm really worried when you say that youth unemployment's come down in that number, Esther, because we know that there is a growing hidden population of our young people who are NEETs. Your civil servants recognise that there are over 480,000 young people who are vulnerable from being hidden from that labour market, and they're not included in those figures.
What do you think of the idea of the 10,000 quid at 25?
The systemic issue we've got with youth unemployment is about our education system, it's about careers education, it's about ensuring that support is there in the early spaces of our young people, and that there are then quality jobs for them to move into. If those things were there in place, then our young people wouldn't... They're not looking for this £10,000. It's not a policy that's come from there.
No, you can come back. No, you come back in a minute. Alejandro.
No, I think what you need to guarantee is opportunities. And you need to allow for free, good education and for people who are going to earn, you said it right, £10,000. If they give me £10,000 when I'm 25, I'll go for a one-month party. What do? You're 25, they give you £10,000 and they don't put any conditions to it. Like you said...
I was going to say, I find it fascinating that all the talk is jobs, jobs, jobs. In the age of kind of digital entrepreneurship, why are we not encouraging young people to create jobs? There are young people in the music industry, young people in all sorts of creative industries that are going online onto YouTube and becoming multi-millionaires. And it seems the two major parties are so far behind, they don't even realise that we're in an age where young people have that kind of...
But that is what we're doing.
Okay,
and the key thing that we are doing, you're quite right, we have got to build on that. What are the opportunities out there? Never before have you been able to set up a business from your own bedroom. We are creating, since 2010, 1,000 jobs every day and each day. We've got record employment. That is what we're doing, and that is key.
Esther, thank you. The woman there in white.
Carly, you say about the creative industries. I completely agree, and I'm a DT teacher, and to be frank, Esther, the government regard DT education very lowly, and really, it doesn't even kick in if the students take the T levels. It certainly doesn't kick in at 14 when they take the GCSEs, and it's very lowly thought of in education. And can I just add that, you know, the creative engineering and manufacturing industries are worth 500 billion, which is 29% of the...
With great respect, the question wasn't about the Tory policy on youth employment. It was about this idea that came from a former Tory about a grant of 10 grand. You haven't spoken yet. What do you think of it?
Well, I think Claire asked, will it reduce inequality? I think the intention of it, which is to try and equalise life chances and ensure that those who hit 25, who are not of great means, can access some of the opportunities that come with maybe having family money to pay for a house deposit that more wealthy people can get. Now, I don't think this is going to solve that problem. Of course, Esther is right. We've got to invest in our young people. But if I look at the journey of a young person in my constituency, from a child to becoming an adult, children's centres had to close due to the cuts that the government made over the last 8 years. And then you went to school, you're building schools for the future projects, renewing our school buildings, stopped. You then got to further education. Education maintenance allowance was taken away from you. And then if you made it to university, your tuition fees were trebled. That isn't investing in young people, that's taking away from young people, Esther. And what... Hang on just a minute, you said a bit how... But what we actually need to do is ultimately, first of all, ensure that we give young people the skills that they need. And I talked about university. It's not all about university. There's too much snobbery about technical and vocational skills and apprenticeships. We need more of that because that's what employers need. And it's all very well saying that youth unemployment has come down, But what is the nature of that employment? How secure is it? We see more 0 hours contracts than ever before and insecure work. So we want decent, secure work.
And what do you think about 10 grand for 25-year-olds, bringing you back to Claire's question?
Well, my problem with it is I'm not sure it is properly directed. And I think it's a fair point that, you know, if you've got very wealthy young people and we've got finite resources, getting that amount of money, is that a good spend of that money? And also, we know that if we want to, if inequality, Claire mentioned inequality, if we really want to tackle that, where you really make a difference is investing in the early years, and we don't invest enough there.
All right, you, sir, in the second row. Yes.
The whole idea is far too simplistic, because if you gave me 10,000 and said I'm living in London, or 10,000 in Leicester, or 10,000 in Carlisle, that would mean a totally different thing. So it's just such a simplistic issue
What would it mean?
It wouldn't work.
What would it mean in Kettering?
In Kettering, it would mean somewhere between London and Carlisle.
OK. And you, sir?
I agree with Carla. You know, I work with artificial intelligence, and having investment schemes for young people to start entrepreneur businesses or whatever is never going to be a bad thing.
Can I just point out that there are massive taxpayer-backed investment schemes for people who already have money, like SEIS and EIS and those kind of schemes. So those of us who already have a little bit of money have these things. Why do they not exist for young people from the lowest socioeconomic brackets? Many of them might not make the mistakes they're making if they actually had access to capital.
Esther, do you want to answer that particular point?
Well, I'll come back. The last 20 years...
just answer his point, yes.
Because there is support. That's what we're looking to do. We've got 1.9 million more children in good or excellent schools. The whole thing that we've got to do is make sure our next generation has got greater opportunities than our generation. I've spent the last 20 years supporting... There's a new enterprise allowance, should you come through the job centre. There is other support that you can get that you will be enabled to do that, and that's what we've been doing as a government. Hence, you've got record employment. But as I've spent 20 years going through schools, speaking to young people, what are the role models, where are the sport, where do you get the best education, and how do you, either through the National Citizenship Service, how do you mix with other people, how do we open up your eyes, your mind, your ideas, and that is what is going to make our country great, a new, great generation of young people.
You said, yes.
Can we reward...
No, sorry, I was going to go to the man next to you, actually, but I'll come to you. Yeah, you'll start with you in the middle.
Yes, well, I fear that this sounds a bit like populism, a policy hiding behind the mask of populism, and it's basically there just to keep them quiet, so that they don't complain.
Well, give them the 10 grand and tell them to shut up and go away.
Sorry?
Give them the 10 grand and tell them to shut up and go away, do you mean?
I don't think it was meant in that way, but that's what it smacks of to
All right, and the man next to you, what do you think?
OK. Can we reward creativeness insofar as that if we had, let's say, a conduit, whereas best ideas that could come forward from the public, that they would then attract a reward because they would be generating jobs, they would be creating equality, fairness, accountability and transparency.
OK, and you in the front, and then we must move on, because we've got a lot of questions to get through.
Well, I think the people who are going to be most successful by the time they're 25 are those who feel valued from the early years. And I think children... I work in education. I've worked in alternative education for quite some time. And there are children who are excluded from school because they haven't yet got a diagnosis of whatever, autism spectrum disorder. That from that very start, and I can tell you now that 2 of my students, one is in year 7 and one is in year 5, actually, and one in year 7.
Okay.
So when they have that kind of start, it doesn't matter what you give them when they're 25, they're going to be playing catch-up.
And let me just... A last word from Claire, who asked the question. What do you think, Claire, of the answers you've heard?
I think, to some extent, I agree with the panel in as much as we need to be providing opportunities for young people. I think that's much more empowering, and I think that's much more fulfilling, ultimately, for people. I'm interested as to how these people are presumably going to be told to spend this £10,000, whether they can put it down as a deposit or just go off on a nice holiday, I don't know. But I do also, assuming that this is something to do with getting on the housing ladder, think, doesn't that just provide more inflation to house prices?
And do you think, because it was sort of implied in your question, that there is a need to redress the imbalance between the generations in terms of wealth?
Yes, I think I do. I think that it's getting harder and harder for people to own property, and property is the biggest wealth that most people that own it actually have. So, yes, absolutely.
OK, thank you very much. We'll go on to another question. Just before we do, we're going to be in Kensington in central London next week, and the week after that we're in Worthing. If you'd like to come and take part in the programme and argue the toss, on the screen there is the address. I'll give it again in detail at the end. But we'll go on to a question. Let's have this one from Tim Woodgates, please. Mr. Woodgates.
Are crazy and cretinous plans for a customs partnership a betrayal of Brexit or a sensible, pragmatic solution?
Crazy and cretinous were the words used by Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg, yes, about the latest proposals for a customs partnership. Chukwumuna, you start on this. Would a customs partnership be a betrayal of Brexit or a sensible and pragmatic solution?
I don't think it'll be either. It won't work. It is not something that our EU partners, the other 27 member states or the institutions will accept. And let's just be clear what we're talking about here. The customs union is this vehicle through which we come together with other countries, we apply an external tariff to non-EU countries, and we negotiate trade agreements. And whether we are in the customs union, I personally think we should continue to be in the customs union. It's been offered to us if we Brexit. Whether we're in it or out of it, we're going to be able to trade. So let's just sweep that issue off the table. The real issue here is the terms on which you're going to be able to trade. And my judgment is we're going to be in a much better position to get good trade agreements for this country if we're negotiating as part of a bloc of 500 million people than if we are doing so on our own. And that is what is really at the heart of the matter here. And why does this matter? Because particularly the customs union has an impact on the export of goods, and we want to export on the best terms possible for our jobs and businesses here. So put jobs and businesses first before all the ideological nonsense you hear coming out of Westminster is what I say.
Yeah, OK. Were the words crazy and cretinous appropriate for a description of the customs partnership that was being proposed then? You're against it? Crazy and cretinous, would you say?
I just think it's unworkable, and frankly, I am... well, I mean, look, I'm not very keen on repeating Boris Johnson's words on many things at all. I mean, if I was the Prime Minister... And by the way, it's worth stating...
He said, if I was the Prime Minister, you better carry on with that sentence before you go any further, before we lose it.
If I was the Prime Minister, sling him out. If you're going to come forward as Prime Minister with a proposal and your Foreign Secretary says you're crazy, chuck him out. But the real more important point, let's just leave the circus act that is Boris to one side. The important point is the Prime Minister put leaving the customs union and the single market to everybody here and the electorate at the general election last year. It was front and centre of the general election campaign. She lost her majority because there's not support for that kind of Brexit. And there is a majority in the House of Commons for us to continue being part of the customs union because people care about your jobs.
Alejandro.
I mean, for me, I would agree it's crazy, but on the other way. It's crazy not to have a full custom union. And I started a company 5 years ago in the UK. I employ probably 120 people direct and maybe 1,000 indirect. We have made a plan to leave the UK in 24 hours. I will offer jobs to all my British employees, of course, in our new location in Europe, and we will go.
When are you off?
Well, I'm waiting for the deal. If there is no deal, we will go.
You want to be in the customs union and the single
market? I would love to stay. I love the UK. This country allowed me to create my company, and it's a fantastic country. And this is where my kids live. They're all also under 25, so they're probably waiting for the £10,000 each. 40,000 we're going to make. But, you know, we would love to stay here. We just want to see if we're going to be allowed to stay or not. And it's a lot of jobs. And you said something. People are not thinking of the jobs. They're thinking on something else. I don't know what they're thinking.
Respecting democracy, that's what they're thinking. Respecting the democratic results.
I think it's very important. I think it's very important to respect democracy, and I think people must be completely free to make wrong decisions.
Keep the UK in the customs
union. But the decisions are wrong, even if the majority votes for them.
He's got the job. If we're not in the customs union and the single market, what happens to your jobs?
Let Chloe answer.
They go somewhere else.
There you go.
Right, can I just say, very well you've said, leaving the EU, Brexit, taking back control of our laws, borders, money and trade. We stay in the customs union, we can't take back control of our trade. It's just that simple. That's why we're leaving the customs union. There are huge opportunities to leaving the customs union and to leaving the EU. Gosh, we've had so much negativity and mean-spiritedness, not just from the EU, but also politicians here at home. This is going to be a fantastic thing for the country. And I just think, you know, politicians like you, Chuka, you need to get behind the country and help make Britain make this a great success.
All right, now, Esther McVey, Chuka says that if he were Prime Minister, he's not Prime Minister, if he were Prime Minister, he'd chuck Boris Johnson out for saying what he did about the proposals being crazy. He can't chuck Rees-Mogg out because he's on the back benches. And he said they were cretinous. And he was sympathetic to that kind of, not to the words, but to their approach to this proposal. Are you in favour of it?
I don't have the rhetorical flourish of Boris, but what I do know is we do have the a cabinet which is representative of the country. You have got people with robust views there, but what we do know, and however we do it, which I agree with Chloe there, the country voted for Brexit. We have to make sure that the politicians deliver the best Brexit possible and make it that we do flourish as a country, because that is what it was about. It was about taking back control of our destiny, about our laws, about who is in control of us and what we can do and future deals that we can do. The Prime Minister has said she's going to go forward and get the best deal. So what we don't want is politicians squabbling behind the back, behind the scene, and in fact doing Barnier's bidding for
You're doing it openly in the cabinet.
Chuka, you voted for a referendum which said we give the voice and the choice to the people. All of the politicians pretty much said that. Now that you think, I don't like what the public decided, you're trying to change the result. No, democracy must come first.
So what do you... So what do you think about Boris Johnson saying that a proposal put forward by the Prime Minister in that cabinet is crazy?
There were two options.
How does that work?
There were two options, and he was giving a very honest opinion of what he thought of one. What she has said is, I will keep looking until I get the best deal. That can be accepted by everybody. So it will go back and re-looked at again. All I'm saying, I think the good thing in Cabinet is that people can have a robust debate. It's unfortunate when it does come out into the public, but hey, we live in an age of transparency, and that's what happened.
He brought it out. He brought it out into the public.
He gave the quote to the newspaper.
Sorry, he was wrong to say in public that it was crazy, in other words.
I wouldn't have. We know that Boris is very open in what he says, but what he is very, I guess, what he is really intent on is the delivering of Brexit. And I think that is what we all want, and we all need to align together to get that best deal for the British public.
Carla?
I don't have a particular view on the customs union per se, but from my standpoint, Brexit was not really about those technicalities. To me, Brexit was about British nationalism. And I think there's something quite fascinating about a country that was historically an empire, a country that has been one of the largest sources of emigrants in the world. So, for example, we talk a lot about post-war mass migration. In the post-war years, 1.5 million British citizens took state-subsidised migration. 75% of them could not have afforded the journey without the state. To Australia, to Southern Africa, to Canada, to New Zealand. Migration that was not available to those of us who came from the Caribbean. We had to pay our own way, as did the people from India, as did the people from Ghana. So it's fascinating that we've got all this amnesia and all this kind of aggression towards immigrants, that we would vote to leave the union based... Well, the second... OK, according to the Lord Ashcroft poll data, you're saying you respect democracy. According to Lord Ashcroft poll data...
Well, that's not a referendum, is it? That's
so, no, just a second. So, according to the polling data of the people themselves who voted, immigration was cited as the second most important reason for leaving, even though
that's
it was meant...
democracy.
Just a second. Even though, as several scholars pointed out, the EU never controlled our immigration laws. So if the people... You can't have it both ways, Chloe, right? If the people themselves voted and you respect that, you've also got to respect that they said their second most important reason was immigration.
And it was very...
But hang on, hang on, Nicole, let's not go into why people voted as they did. What about what's happening now?
No, I've just
what
said...
about what the... You see, you're not interested in that.
No, I'm not saying I'm not interested in that. You asked me about the customs union. I said I don't have a particular view on the customs union.
So, and do you have a particular view about the way it's been discussed in government? Are you confident in Theresa May's
I'm not confident
approach?
in anything Theresa May does.
Oh.
inclination is that Brexit, what it will lead to is not independence, but a closer strengthening of the quote-unquote special relationship and an increase of the Anglo-American empire. I notice no one seems to have an issue with the fact that we have American military bases on our soil that we didn't get a vote about.
OK, let's hear from
if
some
we want
members of our
sovereignty,
audience.
why is that not an issue?
Let's hear from members of our audience. The woman on the gangway there in the fourth row back. Yes.
I just wanted to go back to Chloe's point about how Brexiteers voted to leave the customs union, etc., etc. No, they didn't vote for that. On the ballot paper, it said, would you like to remain in the EU? Would you like to leave the EU? And to say that leaving the customs union is a betrayal of Brexit, sorry, staying in the customs union is a betrayal of Brexit, that's just ideological. It depends on how hard you want your Brexit to be. So your campaign might want a hard Brexit in comparison to another person's idea of Brexit.
Do you think there'll ever be agreement in this country about what we voted for?
No.
You don't? You think...
We've been misled by so many people, and Chloe, what you just said was misleading. We didn't vote to leave the
Hold on a second. Yes, Chloe, and I'll come to you too.
Yeah. So,
can I just ask you that? Because obviously this comes up time and time again.
Yes.
Do you think people are yet reconciled to the vote? Because it seems not, on the whole, that
well,
those who
outside
voted
of the political
against
establishment,
aren't.
yes. So most people in this country just want politicians to get on with it and to actually start to put in place the infrastructure we need to build the country that we're going to live in when we leave the EU. These conversations we had 2 years ago in a referendum, that was settled. Politicians just need to get on with other things now and deliver the result. But on your point about being misleading, no, taking back control of our laws, borders, money and trade, that was the line. That was what every household heard from our campaign. And we made trade deals with the fastest growing economies in the world a key benefit of leaving the EU.
That was just from your campaign. There
the
were
official Leave campaign.
A lot of other Leave campaigns.
OK, let's not re-argue the thing. I'll get to the man in the back there with spectacles. I'll come to you in a moment. The man with spectacles back there.
I'm just getting quite sick of this whole bickering between whether it's the Conservatives or Labour or any other party. You all just need to pull your fingers out and actually get this done and what's best for the nations, not what's best for your party and not what's best for political point scoring.
And what would that be, in your view?
Well, whatever the best kind of Brexit deal would be. I'm not a politician. I don't know these kind of things. But the fact of the matter is, we all want a decent transition. Whether you voted Remain or Brexit, it's irrelevant now. What's happening is going to happen. We just want the best deal that is possible. So pull your fingers out and do something about it.
OK, Chuck, I'll come to you, and then I'll come to you, Esther.
I would say, actually, two things. In fairness, I don't think anybody here... Who wants a bad deal? Nobody wants a bad deal. I think everybody wants a good deal. And one of the refreshing things about the EU debate is it hasn't been terribly party political. You actually have different politicians from different parties working together on different sides of the argument. I co-chair an all-party group on EU relations, mainly made up of, you know, pro-European people who don't want a really hard Brexit. I co-chair...
That's all good and well.
Hang on just a moment. I co-chair that with the Conservatives, so it's not a Labour-Tory thing, and I think we have to accept our country is divided on this, and of course we want to heal those divisions. Now, I'm not sure we ever will reach a consensus on this in Westminster, and I'm not even sure that when we're looking at the Brexit deal, it's right that 650 MPs determine the destinies of 65 million people. I would like to see people get a vote on the Brexit deal, because the way I kind of look at it is this. Hang on just a moment. The way I look at it is this. In 2016, we put an offer in on the House, right? And whenever you go into a house purchase, if you're lucky enough to be in that position, you carry out a survey and you see what the survey comes back with. And if that survey is telling you there are rubbish foundations, you probably don't want to buy this house, you don't go ahead, exchange and complete the transaction.
We've heard this analogy several times
but it's
on
true.
Question time.
But it's
I know,
true.
But
it is true. And we have the right to do that. Yeah. Democracy is not a static thing.
Let's get to the point. You're saying there should be a second referendum on the terms that are negotiated by this government.
I would like to see us have a people's vote on the Brexit deal.
Call it people's vote. You mean
call it what you want. Okay. I want 65 million people's voices to be heard in this, given that there will not be, I don't think, agreement in Westminster on this, because Westminster reflects the country. There isn't one view on this.
All right, forget that. Now, Esther McVeigh, 65 million means everybody just born, incidentally.
No, I said that their voices. I didn't say they'd all get the voice. I mean, one-year-olds get, you know, exactly.
You know, when people don't like referendum 1, they'll go for referendum 2, 3, 4 until they get the answer they want. But the gentleman is spot on. This is beyond party politics. This is about the British people, and what we need to see is the brains of all parties getting together to support this great country. People said in, what's it, Project Fear 1, wasn't it, that, oh, people will leave the country, people won't want to be here, you'll see millions more people unemployed. That has not happened.
10,000
What
nurses
we've got
have
to
left our
do,
NHS already.
what we've got to do is get the best deal. When I go up and down the country speaking to people, they say, you know what, I might not have voted to leave, but because the majority of people did, let's go ahead, let's get it right, and let's do the best we can.
Okay, well,
we are
that's
an
easily...
international country.
Esther,
We
hold on a
are
second. Hold on.
global.
That is easier,
Let's do it.
that is easily said.
waffle.
Let's get the best deal. The question is, do you think, given the present makeup of the Houses of Parliament, of the House of Lords, the constitution of the government itself, that it's ever actually going to be possible to get agreement?
can't
Because,
agree in
hang on a
cabinet.
second, everything that is put up is not done. What hope is there actually of getting
I
a
believe
consensus
it
agreement,
will.
which then has to be agreed by the EU?
I believe it will. I remember at Christmas time, everybody saying to Theresa May, oh, you won't get the first set done about what's going to happen to the citizens, what's going to happen to the money. Yes, she did. I remember going back
Northern
to the
Ireland.
EU in February, and they said you won't get the implementation period. Yes, she did. What we've got to do, Chucker, is get behind her and the country, and we will get that best deal.
Your
But what we
cabinet
don't
isn't.
want to do now is undermine her and do Barnier's negotiations.
Boris
for
is
us.
the one calling
we
her
have
crazy.
got to get this right. So I'm
Michel
afraid,
Barnier.
Like-
Boris is the one calling
like
her crazy.
60
He's undermining
like
her.
61% of Kettering, we need to get behind the Prime Minister and get the best deal, because 61% of people here voted for Brexit.
All right.
We've
we'll
got to
take
remember
it.
the whole
We-
country,
all right,
Esther.
we
And
will-
they, in a
all right,
majority,
we will-
they voted for Brexit,
All right.
Chucker. Just because you don't
Yeah,
like
No,
it.
the whole country.
All right, let's
They
leave all
voted
remain.
for
Leave all
Brexit.
remains. Leave all remains.
Pax, the woman there in green, on the gangway. And we'll take two more points on this, and then we'll go on to another question. Yes?
Isn't the problem that at the heart of government we've got a Prime Minister who's too weak to sack her own Foreign Secretary, despite all of the nonsense he says against her, and a Labour Party leadership that can't even hold her up to scrutiny?
OK, well, that's a left and a right. And from the woman there on the gangway. Yes, you, and then we must move on.
I think going back to what Shuka was saying in terms
Yes.
of the changes, in terms of buying a house and everything else, I think one of the things that seems to have gone adrift is Northern Ireland and the issues around Northern Ireland. And prior to, obviously, with David Cameron, we had the vote, and then we had Theresa May, and then obviously Theresa went to the electorate to obviously see what she could do, and now we're in bed with the DUP. So our hands are tied in terms of DUP and in terms of the Northern Ireland border. And until we sort that out, we can't move on. And regardless of what you
Absolutely
say,
right.
Chloe, in terms
Absolutely
of
right.
everybody knew what they were voting for, I'm not saying that people are stupid. I'm just saying to you there doesn't seem to be anybody who thought about Northern Ireland.
OK. And Tim Woodgates, you asked this question. You obviously spurred on by the words crazy and cretinous. What's your view? Do you think that was appropriate language?
Well, I suppose that there might be edging on rude. I suppose it's surprising for Jacob Rees-Mogg especially. But I think broadly they are correct, though. I think that a customs partnership would severely impinge on our ability post-Brexit to forge our own trade deals. And I want to completely agree with what Chloe's been saying, that was one of is one of the main opportunities following Brexit, and we should be less begrudging and reluctant about pursuing it.
OK, thank you very much. Right, we'll go on to another question from this one from Andy Sumpter, please.
At 104, are you old enough and wise enough to make decisions on life and death?
This is a story, of course, about the British-born scientist David Goodall, who yesterday ended his life in Switzerland, having said that he wished to do that. Was he old and wise enough to make this decision? Alejandro, what did you make of that?
Well, me, I'm a Catholic, and I'm, from Spain, which is a very Catholic country. We are against euthanasia and in any form. And being 104, being 100, being 60, or being minus 6 months, so that includes abortion. So for me, the position is very clear, but comes with my religion. I think it's probably a debate that is going to go forward, but where is the limit? Who do you decide to kill? It's a very difficult question.
But he said he has the right. He said, my life's been rather poor for the past year or so. I'm very happy to end it.
Yeah, I can understand the argument from a human being point of view. I can understand the argument, but it's a very serious matter. Do we want a society that kills its own people? I don't.
Carla?
It's not something I have a strong view about, but I suppose, I mean, if someone wants to kill themselves, how can you prevent them? If you can't prevent people from killing other people. So I don't...
But he wanted to die legally. He could have, of course he could have killed himself. Anybody could do that, but he wanted to die
So the question
legally.
is, should the state take on the responsibility of providing a service to kill people if they want to die? I don't have a particularly strong view on it, but no, I don't have a particularly strong view on it.
All right, Chloe?
I'm a big believer in personal freedom and people being in control of their own lives. But at the same time, you know, reading this story, it made me really sad because the world's less one beautiful human being, and I think this is a very complicated topic. And yeah, like Akala, I think it's one of those things that it's difficult to have a strong view on because there are such strong arguments on either side. And I don't know what I would do in that situation.
I mean, it's not his particular instance. I come to you, sir. It's not the man in particular. It's the issue of whether you should be allowed by the state, whether it should be made possible for you to take your own life. Yes, you, sir.
In my previous job, being in the funeral industry, I've come across death quite a lot. And yeah,
a lot. That's probably an understatement, I should have thought.
But hearing stories of suicide or taking their own lives does take a massive knock-on effect to not just their family, but people that are involved, the police, everything. But for a very old man to take his own life, that's a hard thing to take in personally, because I've had loss myself.
But he didn't take his own life. He had he legally assisted dying. He was given drugs that allowed in Switzerland. Had to go from Australia to Switzerland to do it because he wanted to do it. Yes, the person there. Yes, you. Man there.
Basically, having seen people die in family, it's cruel the way that we let people linger on, especially if they have their sound of mind. Why are they allowed to do this? If it was their choice to die, what right does the state have to say no?
Chuka, what do you make of it?
I have to say, I mean, I'm not aware of this particular story, and I don't instinctively have a strong view either way. I think what my concern would be if we were to go down the Swiss route, and I do have some sympathy with what the gentleman just said, is could we put in place adequate safeguards to ensure that it was a genuine personal decision and wasn't that freedom to make that decision and a change in our legal framework wasn't abused by other people. I think that would be my primary concern. And of course, the thing is, these aren't party political issues, these are issues of conscience. And immediately the question was asked, actually. I just thought of my own family and you know, you think about maybe your parents or where they may be in the future. And, you know, maybe if somebody in your family, thank God I'm not in that situation, has a terminal illness and is saying, I've just had enough and I want to do this. It's that kind of situation that goes through your mind. And I suppose the challenge for policymakers who are making laws is to try to come up with some kind of framework that can deal with that situation. But I'm very open-minded about it, and it is a debate we should have. We had one around assisted dying, actually, Esther and I joined the 2010 to 2015 Parliament together, I think, and there was a bill that went through on this, and there was a fantastic debate in the House of Commons about it. but it's not straightforward. So I'm not very prescriptive in my views about it. But how
did you go on that vote?
We didn't. I don't think we in the end had a vote.
All right, the woman here in the
front
front.
Get put to a vote in the end.
Assisted dying is what we're talking about, of course. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Dignitas in Switzerland.
Yes.
People don't just turn up on their own and that's it. They discuss it with family for some time. It's well planned. It's really thought about. The family love that person so much they totally go along with their point of view. And it's a shame that you have to go as far as Switzerland, like the gentleman did this morning from Australia, 104-year-old, to do this.
OK. Esther McVeigh, I'll come to you.
I think, as Chuck has said there, it's the framework of how we do go about, because the state has to look at the most vulnerable. How would you protect people? How would you, if somebody thought I was a burden, or if somebody was trying to think that they know better and, you know, would assist somebody into dying? So as a state, we've got to really protect those people who might otherwise end up doing this. I personally have never agreed with euthanasia, something that the state would do. However, I have to say, only last week I was visiting a sheltered housing complex, 50 people in front of me of a certain age, and we had this discussion. And so I said to them, because they, you know, they felt they wanted to say on it, and interestingly, everybody but one put their hand up and said, you know what, I would like to choose when I die. They said, yes, we're educated, we've had a great life, but you know what? We don't want to live in maybe pain. We don't want to continue once we've decided, once we've spoken to our family, once we've spoken to doctors. And I have to say, this debate is only going to get bigger, because having had those discussions with people before, I would have had an opposite vote in the room. I would have only had one person saying, I would like to choose when I die. But to see a complete reversal, this debate is going to go on. And I think us politicians are going to have to grapple with this, because, again, sophisticated, you know, people are going to want to choose what happens to them in their older age.
Right.
If somebody has a debilitating disease or illness, don't we have the right to kind of empathise with them and to be able to set up a system where, at the end of the day, they shouldn't have to suffer for years beyond what they were kind of capable of living, of sound mind and things like that.
And this is what the people were saying to me.
Yeah,
exactly that.
I'll take one more point. The woman here on the right in pink.
Yeah,
just briefly, if you would.
Sorry, yeah, it was just to say that I do agree with there's a lot to say about it, and the government would have to be involved in it, because I think that with mental health on the rise, I think that this could be a really, really grey area, and people could really get in trouble and think that they're a burden to their families or whatever, when actually they're just suffering from mental health issues.
Andy Sumpter, what do you think? Who asked the question?
I asked the question because I don't know the answer, to be honest, and I still don't. I absolutely respect the man's decision and his right to choose, but I wouldn't wish the task of carrying it out on anybody, so I don't really know.
Sachin Sudera, let's have your question, please. Sachin Sudera.
Were we wrong about Donald Trump?
Were we wrong about Donald Trump?
Yes, that's the one.
Depends what you thought before, I suppose. Esther McVeigh, were we wrong about Donald Trump?
As you said, I don't know what was right, what was wrong, what you decided in the first place, but what I certainly know, he's certainly doing politics in a very different way.
You don't say.
Yes. But he has brought North and South Korea around the table, something maybe we wouldn't have thought before. So we'll have to see how that pans out. He was voted in through a sort of democratic election. What I know we've got to do as a country is get along with one of our longest, strongest allies, that is America, and work together. And I think, as everybody says, if you're a good friend, you can also say when you don't agree with certain things. So with the Iran nuclear programme, we have said we will remain in that programme because we think it is right that we should be there. He has decided to go on his own path. He wants, as he says, to have a deal that is better and stronger and bigger, but we will remain tied to that nuclear agreement
what do you
and
think
arrangement
of the way he
because
does his
we
politics,
want to make sure.
What do you
there's a
think of the
safe
way
world.
he does it? Just announcing this and announcing that. Do you think it's effective?
What he's doing is bringing in his kind of business negotiation into a political world where we invariably use diplomacy, where we know we've got to get along with policymakers. So he's doing things in a very different way.
Sachin,
and we've got to support him to get it right.
Sachin, what do you think?
I don't feel his successes outweigh his failures. He's someone whose foreign courtship relies upon calling a leader of a nation Rocket Man, or is someone who tweets his political policies, or someone who disregards negative news as fake news. He's a misogynist, he's a racist, he's a xenophobe. I don't think...
Alejandro, what do you make of him? I don't know what you thought of him.
I think what Trump is doing is very serious. He's like the bully in the class, and the problem is we get to fix the mess. And he did that with the Paris Climate Agreement. The planet is in a lot more danger now of having a major climate catastrophe because Trump withdrew from the Paris Agreement. And the rest need to reduce even more the CO2 emissions to fix what he's doing. And now he's doing the same with Iran. You know, this withdrawal from the Iran deal, first of all, makes America untrustworthy because this deal was signed by the United States.
When was America trustworthy? I missed that memo.
But Barack Obama signed an agreement on behalf of a nation, the United States. You cannot just come and tear apart the agreement signed by your predecessor.
But if you think it's an ineffective agreement and you're the next president, you can do that, surely.
Well, yeah, but it's not an ineffective agreement.
He thinks it's ineffective.
And the problem is, all the allies, we need now...
the worst deal ever done.
Yeah, but all the allies, we need now to fix what he's destroying. And France, the UK, and everyone else, and Russia, and they need to go to Iran and say, please, stay calm, we're going to abide by the
Did you expect a rapprochement with North Korea?
Well, I think that the North Korean little guy, Kim Jong-un, whatever his name is taking Trump for a ride. I think he's taking Trump for a ride. I think...
Can I just point out?
Yes.
You may remember, or you may not remember, a few years ago, I think it was 2014, but don't hold me to that. Gallup, which is an American polling company, did a global survey, 66 countries, over 100,000 people. So this was not just radical, crazy leftists. And they asked people, which country in the world is the greatest danger to world peace? This was before Trump came into office. 25%, 24% to be precise, responded the United States of America. Yeah? So if people already thought America was the greatest threat to world peace, which by inference means we're part of the threat to world peace.
Sorry, 24%.
24%, but it was the #1 country. Right? It was the #1 country. 24% of all the respondents around the globe already thought that, which by essence puts us in that camp. How much worse has that got for the people around the world now? This was when Obama was leader. So I think the whole question has to be, and it's disgraceful that we don't have more challenge from anyone in our political establishment, bar a couple of radical, crazy leftist people, whether there's any challenge to the role of America's world as the global policeman. Because most of the world do not accept that. And if we're saying we believe in democracy, why are we not supporting international democracy?
Chloe Wesley.
Well, I think there are a lot of people that are quick to criticise his actions just because they hate him as a person and don't, stop to think about what he's actually done. Look, when he made that speech to the United Nations, when he used very tough language about North Korea and those subsequent tweets, everyone criticised him, everyone said he was a joke, and now look where we are. We'll have to wait and see how those negotiations go. If he can secure this, maybe he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. If he can pull it off, who else would have done more for world peace than securing that deal?
Chukwumuna?
Well, the first thing I would say is let's get this in perspective.
Was she right, first of all, before you move on? That if he's got it right, he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize.
Actually, we're pretty big. If he makes it happen, it would be. I'm with Chloe. It would be pretty big. I don't trust the little guy, but she would be right.
Yeah. I'm not sure I can conceive of circumstances where we'd all be saying he should get the Nobel Peace Prize. But what I was going to say is, I think we've got to be careful here to distinguish between President Trump and the American people.
Of course.
They are two different things. And there are a lot of people in America who feel exactly the same as we do. And Sachin, I agree with you. You know, is he as bad as we thought he would be? I thought the guy was a racist, a misogynist, an Islamophobe, hate peddler, somebody who lies to other people, and everything he has done in office has reinforced my view of that. But I also think we've got to be, I think we just got to be a bit more, how can I put it, less sentimental and more realistic about our relationship with the US. I'm not sure I buy all the special relationship, but it's a very important relationship. And over time, over history, we, working with the US, have done, I'm sorry, I don't totally agree with Carla on this, we have done some very good things in the world. If it hadn't been for the US's intervention in the Second World War, it's questionable whether we would have overcome fascism and Hitler. And there are a number of other things, of course, we have done since that time working with the US. But it's a hard-headed relationship, OK? And when we disagree with them... Hang on just a minute. When we disagree with them in the way that, say, for example, the Labour Prime Minister Harold Wilson did on Vietnam, we don't just blindly follow them like a poodle. And there were things, admittedly, during, you know, the Labour Party's time in office, where I think we should have challenged the US more. I didn't agree with the Iraq intervention, but I think we've got to be careful here, because I do think they are a country who have been a good friend and ally to the UK, and we should be mature enough that when you have a president like him coming out with the kind of things that he comes out with, we challenge him where appropriate.
Would you challenge him on the North Korean deal?
Well, absolutely.
Or do you accept that?
I think there's a real problem, because there's a connection here between the Iran deal, which he just wants to tear up, and Korea. I mean, actually, as it happens, the Iranians have kept to what was required of them in that deal. Now, it wasn't the perfect deal. It didn't cover...
No, sorry, North Korea is the question I asked you about.
Yes, but there is a link here, because if he, you know, doesn't comply with the Iran agreement, Trump, and he just tears it up, how on earth are the North Koreans going to have confidence he'll stick to any deal that he does with them?
I get the point. You said that.
Sorry, I basically just finished a paper on global nuclear developments across different countries, and basically, as much as I can see, I don't agree with everything that Donald Trump says. I read hundreds of articles that said that Korea was going to be the next World War III, that they would never come to the negotiating table, and yet what the US achieved in 10 years of UN, you know, sort of trying to nurture Iran and things like that, what they achieved in that in 10 years has happened in 18 months under Donald Trump. Now, I may not agree with everything that he has said about Korea, but you cannot doubt that it's been a success. You know,
we don't have a deal yet.
No, but even the change in rhetoric, we're talking about somebody here that, you know, months ago it was, this is going to end the world, this conflict, and now you've got to say, you know, and I feel that it's because it's Donald Trump that you have a tunnel vision now, that people can't see any successes, and I'm sorry, but I think that that is a really dangerous way to think.
OK. And you up there?
With Trump, no one thought he would actually get his policies through when he came into office, and the policies that his electorate voted for him to do. And guess what? He's actually done them. And so the problem with Trump, if you call it a problem, is bigger than Trump himself now. The people who voted to put him in power, they believe in Trump. They believe he does what he does. He's lowered taxes. He's made Wall Street back again. If Trump gets unelected, if he doesn't stay in power for the next 4 years, there's still a whole base of people that believe in Trumpism and believe in Trump's ideas and believe in this new conservatism that seems to be in America. By talking about Trump as if, is he everything we thought he would be? It's more than Trump, it's the people who have put him in power there.
Thank you. OK, we've got four or 5 minutes. Hallam, Sevier, Burnap. Let's just have your question.
Does the failure of Labour to gain ground in traditional working-class towns, like Dudley and Bolton, suggest that Corbyn mania is dead?
Oh, this is for you. Who quit the front bench when Corbyn became leader. Is Corbyn mania dead as a result of the local election results? We have to be quick on this, by the way.
I'm not sure there was mass Corbyn mania in the first place, but I think we need to get away, you know, as a Labour Party. It's not about the personality. I think what you want to know is what are we actually going to do to change your lives, whether you are in, you know, a community like mine or the kind of community that you referred to.
I think Hallam wants to know about Jeremy Corbyn. That's why he asked the question.
I've just told you that I don't
You don't think he does want to know that?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, if you listen to the answer, I said I didn't believe that there was mass Corbyn mania, and even if we do believe in mania, I'm not sure mania is what people want to know. They want to know what are the policy solutions, what are we going to do to make sure we have more affordable housing, better jobs, better paid jobs, what are we going to do to ensure that the circumstances of your birth do not determine where you end up in life.
All right, you're giving us Labour policy.
That's what people are interested in.
But
that happens to be what I believe, actually.
Yeah, what about the local election results? Do they show
we need to do better. No, there's no doubt about it. We need to do better to win.
I think the phrasing of the question itself is interesting. Traditional working class towns. Is Hackney not a traditional working class town? Is Tottenham not a traditional working class town? Is Moss Side not a traditional working class town? I just think the phrasing of the question is very interesting.
What does the questioner mean by it?
What does the questioner mean by traditional working class towns?
What do you mean by it? Hallam, what did you mean?
Traditional working class towns, they tend to vote towards Labour. Now, you look at Dudley, no overall control. Again, Conservatives picked up the UKIP support. Labour, what do? Nothing. They didn't gain any councillors. You look at Bolton, the Conservatives picked up seats again. What are Labour doing? Why have they lost 3 seats in Bolton? Why are they not doing more for traditional working class towns, which are supposed to be their base of support?
But that's what I'm saying. Define that. Hackney, one of the poorest wards in the country, yeah? Traditional working class town. I'm saying, why have you picked what is the criteria by which you've picked your traditional working class town? I'd like to know. When was Hackney rich? When was Tottenham rich? When was Moss Side rich?
All right, you made the point. Esther.
He's very North London. He's very London-centric. I would also say Corbynism is unravelling, and what we're seeing is a far left. What we're seeing is a momentum. I know it militant from Liverpool in the 1980s. You've got MacDonnell, who is his shadow chancellor, who agrees in Marxism. What we're seeing is the unravelling of this very ugly far-left organisation.
Do you condemn your foreign secretary laughing about dead Libyans?
I would say he has never come out and agreed with Marxism. He has never been anti-Semitic. He has never been a misogynist. And this is what you're seeing now with the unravelling of Corbyn.
All right, that discussion isn't going to go.
Yes or no?
Chloe.
Well, I think what's interesting is how, outside of London in particular, Jeremy Corbyn's style of politics and his ideas don't go down very well. It's a very insular group of people in London who believe in that style of socialism and Marxism. And I don't think that under Jeremy Corbyn, Labour can win back those votes.
Is a Marxist manifesto? Have you read it?
The
basic European shadow chancellor is a Marxist.
Me looking from outside, I don't have the luck to vote in the UK, and I'm a guest in this country, but looking from the outside, I think the leadership, and I'm sorry, you're both parties, both leadership seems a bit kind of like old school and kind of stale and kind of, I don't know, I mean, I think you need new people. I think this guy could be a really good, you too.
You think these two? Okay. On that note, we've got only a few moments left. Who hasn't spoken yet who wants to speak? All right, you haven't spoken. Quickly, if you would, madam.
I don't think Corbyn mania is dead at all. And in response to Chloe's question, I don't believe outside of London don't care about Corbyn's policies. I do. And on that point, a problem we have at the moment, the criminal bar is on strike at the moment.
I did say briefly.
I understand, but...
That's not a pun, by the way.
There is an important point I'm trying to make here. They're on strike because there are record numbers of unrepresented people out there today. When are we going to fix the criminal justice system, Esther McVey?
I'm going to have to stop you. She can't answer because our time's up. I'm sorry about that.